So what we need to do is we need to echo out the value of the session that currently exists. So let's go ahead and open up PHP tags. Remember we've broken out of PHP, let's just go back to here. We've said if something, we've broken out of PHP into HTML. This is just to speed up the script. It really helps when you're putting long amounts of HTML in there. You don't want to, you want to break out of the script. I have a tutorial on this, so if you want to go ahead and look at that and understand how this works, then great, go ahead and do that. We're then breaking into PHP and ending that block, and then we're saying else show our login form. So hopefully you understand how that works. So we're opening up a PHP tag, and we are saying echo $_session user ID. So remember, up here we are checking if it's set, if the user ID is set, and then down here we are echoing out that user ID. So what we can now do, I'm just going to go into my FTP client and upload that file. Okay, so let's go over here and refresh the page. Let's right click and click view page source. Now what we can see here is everything we've entered in our text editor. So we entered my email address here, the item name, the item number, which is irrelevant really, the amount, blah 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 blah. But the interesting part is this custom here. What we've done is now it equals 1. So as well as all this information we're processing to PayPal, we're also processing this custom field here, which corresponds to my user ID. So when we do process our script, we update the correct user and set premium from 0 to 1. So let's go ahead and test this, because obviously it's important that we're displaying all the correct details when we want to check out with PayPal. So our user has logged in, we click upgrade to premium, and this will take a moment to just transfer us over to paypal.com. And it gives us all the relevant information here. So now we've successfully transferred the user to PayPal to make their payment. So premium membership at $8.99, and everything's working. We can enter our email address to pay with, which obviously won't be alex@phpacademy.org. it will be something different. Then the PayPal password, and then our IPN is called. So what is our IPN? We've already discussed this, but if we go over to Google and Google for PayPal IPN sample code, it might make a difference if you're using .co.uk, .com, or whatever other TLD you're using, or whatever domain you're using to access Google. And the first result for me is IPN code samples, and this is the page that I want. So if we click on that, you can see that we've got a page here with instant payment notification IPN sample code. So like I said earlier, we can use a variety of languages, but in our case we're using PHP obviously. So we can download this in a text file, and if you click on that, you will receive this file here. Now the code that's available on the phpacademy.org forum, I suggest instead of using this, you use the one that I've provided on the forum. And the reason being is because this is not indented, so I've tidied it up in the sense of indentation to make it a lot easier to understand the code. You don't really need to understand this code, but what you do need to understand is, or take a fresh look at it to understand where we're putting things and where things are going. So you can see here that we've got if str cmp blah 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 verified equals 0. Essentially this here is the area that we get if we are successfully processing the payment. So if anything else doesn't work, then we're going to say like invalid, or if we're getting an HTTP error here, otherwise blah blah blah. We're checking the payment. We need to do these steps essentially. So PayPal, this script is telling us what we need to do in order to successfully check everything and then process the payment at the end of it. So we can take these comments as notes, but if you go over to my code, you can see that, let's go over to IPN.php, you can see that I've indented everything just to make it look a bit nicer. And this is the area here that we're going to be processing our payment and the data from our variables that have been passed up here. Now there is one thing that we need to do before we do anything, and that's take into account our custom variable, which, like I said, is really important. So I'm going to create this as a variable called user ID, and that's going to be equal to $_post, and in here it's custom. So remember, in our page here we have this custom variable here. What we're then doing is retrieving it through post data here. So that's our user ID, our user's ID. Okay. The next thing we need to take into account is up here we're actually going to be connecting to our database, because inside our IPN.php, when it calls from PayPal, we need to be able to connect to our database in order to update different values in our database, so premium in this case. So we need to require into our IPN.php script glob.inc.php, which, remember, connects to our database here. Okay, so now that we've done that, we've prepped our IPN file, which is going to be looked at by PayPal. We need to work on this code, but the first thing we want to do is let our users know if they've got premium membership or not. So we need to create this premium check function. So if you're creating this tutorial using the tables that I've created, this is going to give you a better idea of how the tables that I've created work. So the first thing that we need to do is define our function. So we're going to define our function, and this is going to be called is_premium. Okay, so we do that. We do our two rounded brackets and then our two curly brackets, and we're not passing any arguments to this function. So the first thing we need to do is we need to perform a query, and this query is going to select the value of premium, of the premium field, from the users table where our user ID is equal to the current user logged in. So let's go ahead and say premium_query is equal to MySQL query, and then inside here goes our query. So select premium from users. Now, if you don't understand this already, we're selecting the value of premium. Remember, that exists here, so we're selecting this value, which at the moment 0. We're selecting that from the users table, that's the table name there, and we're saying where user_ID, remember that's another field in our table here, where user ID is equal to, so we're going to put a value inside here, but first we need to break out of our string and break back into it again there, and we need to concatenate on our value in the middle, and that is going to be $_session. Remember, our session is called user_ID. So that query is essentially checking from our database if the current user has the premium value set to 0 or set to 1. We're going to check that in just a moment underneath this query.